Hey everyone, this is Dr. Syed Haider. Back for a live stream. I missed last week. Hopefully the internet is functioning properly. Seems to be a little bit slow, so you guys let me know if it's possible to hear me and if you're having any trouble with the connection. And if there is any problem, maybe I'll go somewhere else and try to connect to a different service. All right, so let's jump into it. So if you have any questions, drop them in the chat wherever you're at, and I'll try to keep an eye on Twitter and see if anyone posts a reply to the live stream tweet. And if you're on Rumble or wherever else, I think that or Facebook, if you drop a question in the chat, it should show up for us. All right. So we have a bunch of questions that have been submitted already that I can go through until we get live questions. So Frank asked, we have two grandchildren, ages roughly 15 and 17 months. Both have traveled overseas recently. So maybe this condition is due to a travel type bug, etc. But both have been having intermittent prolonged periods of diarrhea, and one has had bouts of multi-day type crying. Being upset. They are both on the regular vaccine schedule, possibly just regular growing up toddler stuff, but I thought I'd throw it out there to see if there's any input regarding whether it's possibly vaccine related. Thank you. So the vaccine schedule nowadays, I think, includes COVID shots, right? So, I mean, that's always a possibility depending on when the vaccine was given, but you need to look at it in context of, the whole context of these kids, their health and their prior history and what's been going on. So I think you're probably on the right track with the travel bug idea. That's probably the most likely issue that would be causing diarrhea and bouts of crying and stuff like that. Maybe they had some stomach upset along with the diarrhea that, was causing pain. I don't recommend any vaccines anymore. I think they're all I wouldn't vaccinate my own kids. I posted on X recently, I would lie, cheat, and steal before I give a vaccine to my child. But be careful what you say, because Child Protective Services, somebody might report you. But the idea there is that morality is in place. It's there to protect human beings. All of the things that we need, including our life. So if you're not at that, I know they're your grandkids, so you don't really have as much of a say as you would with your own kids, obviously, and how they're raised. But if you are concerned, or if you're not concerned about vaccines at all, then I would suggest looking into them more deeply. So a Midwestern doctor.substack.com. So he's got a great read and figure out whether you want to pay to become a subscriber. But he's got a couple of great articles on vaccines. One kind of goes through all the ones that a kid might be given in the US and explains why you probably don't want to get them. There is other data. I mean, he doesn't cover everything, but it's a great resource to start with. And then you can look at, there's documentaries, and there are books like Turtles All the Way Down. There's another book by the same name, so get the one that's about vaccines. And there's a lot of information on social media nowadays. So, and you can look at Children's Health Defense work and RFK Jr.'s work as well on the vaccines. So maybe it's possible to create a healthy vaccine. It's just not possible to do it at scale the way we're doing, like industrialized production of vaccines, making them super cheap and churning them out. And, but maybe it's not possible, because when you have to add all those adjuvants really rile up your immune system. But I think that the biggest issue is not so much the adjuvants, but the toxins. And if the adjuvants themselves are a toxin like aluminum, then that's a problem, obviously. So if you had an adjuvant that was non-toxic, just kind of like kicked your immune system in the bottom to get it, to recognize that there was a pathogenic, protein just injected into it. And the injection is also a problem. So if you could administer it without any risk of it entering the bloodstream, so there's some requirements that would have to be there. And then the other thing is, like, is it effective? So the vaccines just don't seem to be effective at all. Um, the the best thing you can say about them probably is what Chris Masterjohn has said, is that you're less likely to test positive for the disease you got vaccinated against, but that doesn't mean you're not going to get a disease that looks exactly like it. It's just not going to have a positive test to go along with the disease. So yeah, I mean, it's a total mess, the vaccine industry. I think it's only in existence because some group in the Department of Defense thinks that maybe they work, and maybe we'll get attacked by a bioweapon from a rival at some point, and we'll need to spin up billions of doses or hundreds of millions of doses of vaccines at the drop of a hat. And the only way to be able to do that is to have a working industry in place. Okay, so and to keep it going, you can't just have the machinery and let it sit there and wait for when you need it. You have to constantly be developing that industry and constantly be keep it going. So it's kind of like the story, whether it's true or not, about the moon landing and the technology that we used. It's like we let it languish, and eventually it died, and all the people who remembered how to actually build it are no longer there. So just because you have the specs, or because you have like the books that describe how things are done, there is a lot of knowledge that stays up here in people's heads, and if they don't directly pass it on to the next person, then it will just die, and you'll have to rebuild the thing almost from scratch, right? Like, so that people have this misconception about industry that once you've developed the technology, it just remains, and it never gets lost. No, you can actually lose technology, and you can lose the ability to make things that you used to be good at making. So like the know-how is basically there everywhere in the world, right? Like, we know how to do things, but like, supposedly, but you'll still find that, like, in certain countries they just can't pull it off, right? They just don't have the industrial manufacturing strength anymore in their population, so you can lose it. So I think that along with the fact that I don't think 99% of pediatrics practices wouldn't be in existence without vaccines. As conservative numbers, based on how much, like, small amounts of money that they get per vaccine that they administer, times all the vaccines they do every day or year, based on how many kids they have and how many vaccines they have to get between the age of 1 and 18. And even leaving out, like, incentives from insurance companies, you come up with numbers that are pretty large. They're like 50% or more of the total revenue of most pediatrics practices, and the overhead of most pediatrics practices is 50% or more. So that suggests that the only reason the vast majority of pediatrics practices are viable is because of administering vaccines. And the other reason to think that that's the only reason most pediatrics practices are viable is if you suspect that vaccines are a major cause of childhood chronic disease and morbidity. So you give them all the shots, and then they come back to you for sick visits. So first you see them for all the well visits, and you set them up for all the sick visits later. Obviously, there's other things. I think one of the biggest causes of chronic disease, I'm working on an article right now for this, it's going to be out in a couple of weeks, probably, are seed oils. So there's a great book out by Catherine Shanahan called Dark Calories, and I highly recommend people get it and read at least the first section. The second and third sections aren't as important, but the first section is probably like 150 pages or something. It goes really fast. You can read it in like 1 or 2 afternoons, and she really lays out the data and the theory that pretty conclusively prove how terrible seed oils are for you. And so they are toxic. They're probably as toxic as any other toxin, but the key difference is that they make up like a third to 50% of normal person's calories. Okay, so the quantity of the toxin that you're consuming is super massive compared to all other sources of toxins, whether they be pesticides, herbicides, forever chemicals, microplastics, even vaccines, honestly. So vaccines could be particularly toxic if they enter the bloodstream and then go and destroy certain target tissues, which is a random occurrence. Look at the bolus theory of Marc Girardeau to understand that. But just based on the sheer quantity of seed oils that people eat, and the makeup of their body, like the seed oils become part of you, right? So they replace natural fats, traditional fats in your cell membranes and also in your fat depots in your fat cells, and they're not normal fats because they're super inflammatory. They cause oxidation or oxidative stress essentially. And there was one study, she's got some great points in this book. One of the things I remember is that there was a study where they gave, two groups of people. One group they gave super high seed oil diet, or like what's normal for a lot of people, I guess, but seed oil, plus a lot of vitamin E to try to counteract the pro-oxidant effect by giving this vitamin E antioxidant to see if they could cancel out the negative effects. And then the other group, they gave basically natural oils and something like less than 5%, seed oils in their diet. So both groups seemed about the same for the first 2 years, but after 2 years, the antioxidant effect was no longer strong enough to prevent the pro-oxidant effect, the oxidizing effect of the seed oils. And so because there's an overwhelming quantity of them, and so eventually, no matter what supplement you take, you're not going to be able to fix the problem. You're not going to be able to take enough antioxidants to fix the problem. It's just impossible. So this is one of the reasons it kind of illustrates a broader point, which is that supplements oftentimes are just as bad as medications. They're just Band-Aids, right? So in that case, the vitamin E was a Band-Aid. The problem continued to get worse over those 2 years until finally it overcame the effect of vitamin C to stop it from expressing itself. And the only way that can happen is if it was continually getting worse until it exceeded the suppressive effect of vitamin C or vitamin E in that case. And so it's not like, oh, you had 2 years of like, an interim where you didn't have any problem, and then suddenly it went from 0 to 1 in 2 years. After 2 years, no, it was constantly getting worse. So it's like, that's the definition. You just paper over it, put a Band-Aid on it, and you don't see what's happening underneath the surface. It's actually, the problem's still there, and it's getting worse and worse and worse. And so all sorts of vitamins and supplements oftentimes do this. All right, Tracy says, are PRP or plasma treatments safe due to long haulers having microclots? I don't know. Platelet-rich plasma, I guess she's talking about, and probably the platelet part. So usually those are injected into tissues, not into the bloodstream. So if you're injecting it into like a soft tissue, not into your blood, then platelet-rich plasma should be okay. For like a musculoskeletal issue, but I'm not like an expert on platelet-rich plasma. I would go and tell everyone to go do. I do think that it was going to be better, and I would probably, if I wanted to go a little bit unnatural, I would try red light therapy first on those tissues. But what I would prefer would be just sit outside as I am right now and get early morning and late afternoon sun for the red light and near infrared. Although the near infrared is present all day long in significant quantities. So photobiomodulation, you can do it all day long. And you do need all the different wavelengths of the sun throughout the day. So I think the bare minimum is you get it the first 30 minutes after sunrise, the last 30 minutes before sunset, and in the middle of the day as much as you can tolerate based on your skin type. But try to work up a tan regardless of your skin type, which is possible. Even Fitzpatrick type 1s can learn to tan or develop, the ability to tan, but it might take a little bit more effort, and you might need to clear up your diet. Seed oils will also affect your ability to tan and your proclivity to burn. So get those out of your diet regardless. And the half-life of seed oils in your body tissues is on average 18 months. It could be a little bit shorter or a lot longer. So half-life means after 18 months, half of them are gone. So it's going to be like a while before you get down to like less than 5%, which is probably where you need to be for optimal health. But it doesn't take that long to start feeling significantly better and start having improvements. And the other reason, going back to that seed oil discussion, to have to read that book, Dark Calories, is because she really lays out how they destroy your metabolism, because your mitochondria really can't use the energy that's in seed oils. They can't break them down for energy. So you go from having a normal metabolism where you can primarily rely on fat for your fuel and you don't get overweight, to having a broken metabolism where you can't metabolize the fat because the fat stores are full of seed oils and the seed oils are toxic to the mitochondria, so they can't use the seed oils, right? So the fat stores just keep building and the mitochondria shift over to glucose metabolism. And when they do that, you gradually develop insulin resistance because I mean, it's a little bit complicated, but basically, if I can remember how the sequence goes, or try to work it out again. I went through it when I was reading or writing this thing. You're going to have starving tissues because they can't use the fats. So they start pulling sugar out of the bloodstream. And there's only like a teaspoon or two of sugar in your bloodstream, like very small quantities. When the sugar gets yanked out of your bloodstream, your brain starts to yell because your brain uses 20% of the energy in your body. And, you know, even though it's relatively small, it certainly doesn't make up 20% of the mass of your body. And it only basically runs on sugar or ketones, which again come from fat, and you can't use the fat from those things, so you can't make the ketones. So the brain can override the rest of the body, and it doesn't need insulin. That's the important thing. So the brain, all the other tissues in your body, they need insulin to suck blood sugar out of the blood into their cells and to where their mitochondria are, so that, which are the powerhouses of the cells, so that the mitochondria can make energy from the sugar. So the brain will say, okay, I'm taking most of the sugar. And then the other cells are starving and they can only use sugar because they can't use the fat that you're eating anymore. And they could use protein, but they don't want to just directly, they can't directly metabolize liver first. So anyway, they need to get sugar out of the blood. That's their source of energy if they can't use fat. So the blood sugar goes up. There's a trigger from everywhere in your body saying we need more blood sugar than there is. Like we're using blood sugar, we're sucking it out of the blood, so the blood sugar is dropping. So there's a trigger to raise the blood sugar. So the blood sugar goes up, but every time the blood sugar goes up, the pancreas is triggered to release insulin to bring the blood sugar back down. So the blood sugar will tend to go down due to the higher insulin, but then the brain, sensing that it is not getting enough blood sugar, will force the blood sugar, it will override the pancreas, force the blood sugar up. So there's this stepwise problem where blood sugar goes up, insulin goes up, blood sugar goes up even higher, insulin goes up even higher. And so what this is creating is insulin resistance. So your cells are needing more and more insulin to suck the suck the sugar out of your bloodstream, while the brain doesn't need the insulin at all, right? But your cells have to keep using insulin to get the blood sugar out of the bloodstream. And as insulin levels go up, the body becomes more and more resistant to insulin. It's just a vicious cycle. The sugar levels keep rising. And the issue here, another issue, is that once you get insulin resistance and you have higher blood levels, a drop in blood sugar will make you feel hypoglycemic, even if it's not really that low, like, or what we normally consider low, even if it's like, it could be, so like a normal fasting blood sugar in the morning should be 85, 70, 80, but, probably best would be 70 to 85. Prediabetes would be 100 and diabetes would be 120. And yet somebody with prediabetes or diabetes might feel hypoglycemic, like they have low blood sugar, they're starving for energy, when their blood sugar is 90 or 100 or even 200. So it's a vicious cycle and it leads to all sorts of metabolic diseases. So just a quick explanation, which may not have been perfect, but I'll have to go back and review it myself, on the problems with seed oils. All right. Debbie Osborne says, why are so many of the vaccine injured diagnosed with FND? Is that a cop-out answer? I don't know off the top of my head what FND is. like functional neurological, functional neurological disorder. Yeah, it is a cop out, So when doctors hear that, they're probably thinking this person needs to go see a psychiatrist or a psychologist or a therapist of some kind. It basically means, I mean, it's just a fancy way of saying your nervous system isn't working properly and we don't know why, right? So it's not functioning right and we don't know why. Okay, great. Thanks for telling me something I didn't know. So yeah, yes, it is a cop out. And they really hobble themselves, mainstream physicians, because unless it comes down from on high, from like the, the medical board authorities, or like the groups of like quote unquote experts that write guidelines and stuff, they just refuse to do anything, right? So they refuse to think out of the box. They refuse to think for themselves. They refuse to go and see what functional medicine doctors are doing or anyone else is doing. They refuse to go and like find out what cutting edge labs are available now, because there's no data on them. There's nothing published in New England Journal of Medicine, as though that's, a criteria that you should even care about anymore. So yeah, but there are, in the functional medicine world, plenty of tests available to actually reveal what the problem is. So the only commonly done test in a neurology clinic that I've ever seen come back positive for somebody with chronic fatigue or long COVID or vaccine biopsy showing small fiber neuropathy. And fixing them, but never specifically aiming for symptom suppression. What you can do, because your body is trying to get rid of spike and whatever, toxins through your lungs. So you need to strengthen your lungs, maybe and the best way is usually to do breathing exercises. So breath work, buteyko breathing, or something similar, some sort of pranayama, pranayama yoga breathing. Alternate nostril nasal breathing is good, but also just buteyko breathing and deep breathing, so deep belly breathing exercises. So a variety, you can go and look up a bunch of different breathing exercises and give them a try. 30 minutes a day, 15 minutes twice a day, or something like that. Come up with something that works for you. Even if it's just one start, even if it's just to start with, it's 1 minute a day. Start somewhere and build from there. Gradually increase the time as you get used to it, and you don't feel like it's dragging you down, or that it's a burden on you. And you have to be diplomatic with yourself, okay? And if you do things gradually, that's the best way to ensure that you continue to do them as long as you need to do them, long enough to get better. And if you try to go straight to 30 minutes a day, you're likely to just give up and be like, oh my God, this is way too much. This is ridiculous. So start with like 5 minutes, and and then go to 10 and 15 and 20 and 25 and 30, as you feel comfortable and not feeling overburdened at all. So that's probably the best thing to do. You could do some other things if there are microclots. Definitely nattokinase serapeptase, that kind of the detox spike buster at my go-to stack is fantastic. That's what we made it for. And then the immunity herbals is a great complement to that. Eric says, what's the leading hypothesis for the pathology that results in symptoms of brain fog, fatigue, and vision issues? Is it viral debris and associated inflammation, active virus, fractionated virus, spike protein, etc.? I've been throwing a lot of stuff at it, and the only significant signal has been zone 2 cardio and sauna. That seems to clear it for a short period of time. Just the sauna works also. I'm thinking of doing a long dry fast, 3 to 5 days or maybe longer. My max is 8 days. Yeah, so I don't know what I would say is the leading hypothesis. I think there's still a lot of competing hypotheses, but I think you're on the right track. Viral debris, spike protein, and possibly active virus. So active virus is certainly not the leading hypothesis, but it's, I think, very likely that that is present in some people, at least. In immune privileged tissues, it's just hiding and you can't find it. It's very difficult to find. But viral debris and spike protein and basically, what is inflammation? Inflammation is your immune system. Inflammation is a good thing. Inflammation is like saying inflammation is bad is like saying having an army, an air force, and a navy is bad, especially when you've actually already been invaded and you're at risk of being destroyed as a country, and you don't want to be destroyed, I'm assuming. So inflammation is a good thing, and inflammation is basically doing exactly what the Army, Air Force, Navy, the SEALs teams and everyone else, in our military do. They are fighting off the enemy, trying to get it out of you, and whatever that enemy is, and whether it's in your cells or around your cells. If it's in your cells, your Army, Air Force, Navy is going to have to destroy your own cells, right, for your own good, and then create new ones, rebuild. So really the perfect metaphor, I think, is a war, like when you're under siege, or not even under siege, when you've already been invaded. They've infiltrated your country. So it's infiltrated your body. It's in you, and it's in some of your cells. The problematic things, whether they're, debris or toxins or pathogen or even live pathogens, are inside some of your cells. Those cells got to go. And those cells were the weakest cells to begin with because they got invaded, right? The strongest cells didn't get invaded. So it's a survival of the fittest, natural selection situation. And if you interfere with it by suppressing your symptoms, you just worsen the problem and eventually you die, right? So if you interfere with nature, eventually you're going to destroy the system and destroy the species viability, right? So in this case, we're talking about our own body's viability, but you can draw a metaphor to species viability. Like if you go on the African savanna and you stop all the lions from eating on the weakest, hyena or the weakest gazelles, eventually the whole herd of gazelles is going to get weaker and weaker and weaker, right? So that does happen. It's like dysgenics, instead of eugenics, it's the opposite, dysgenics, that leads to the idiocracy, right, of the movie. This can happen in human populations. It can happen in human beings. And I'm not saying that we need to all be Nazis or anything. I'm just saying that we need to, look at the reality of the situation, especially when it applies to ourselves, and realize that if you create a dysgenic situation inside your own body, then you're going to have a dysgenic outcome and you're going to get weaker and weaker. That's what we see happening. People suppress their symptoms year in, year out, month in, month out. Every time they start to get sick, they stop it from happening. So they stop the killing of their own weakest cells, which must happen if they want to live a long and healthy life. So and that's what autophagy is as well, right? So that's what, to go to your fasting point, that's what fasting does. You're fasting, you're starving yourself, essentially, which means your body has to recycle itself to stay alive. And so what does it go after? It goes after the weakest links. It goes after the weakest cells and it kills them. It destroys them. And it uses, recycles the material that it gets from them to bolster the stronger cells, right? And the longer you go, the fewer weak cells you're left with and the more strong cells you're left with, and the stronger they are. They've been given food in the perfect food, right? Like you're eating yourself, right? And I'm not saying we should go be cannibals either, right? But like a skin cell, all the things it needs is in the skin cell next door, right? And if the skin cell next door is on its last legs, kill it and recycle all the ingredients the skin cell needs and give them to the skin cell that's viable. So this is the way fasting works. This is the way illnesses are supposed to work, right? So the only reason we need so much fasting nowadays is we never let ourselves get sick. We never let ourselves come down with the flu and be sick for a week, and be really sick for a week or two, right? And because we just got to go back to work, I got to suppress the symptoms maximally so that I can just keep working, keep on chugging. So, we got to start being balanced people and live in a balanced society. And I grew up the same way. I grew up in the US. I grew up in Florida. I grew up in that society of like, always on, charging ahead, type A, kind of culture, and like, sneering at the people who take a sick day off. I'm one of those people. I know what it's like. I know what it feels like. I'm the tough guy. I don't need sleep. I don't need food. I don't need this. I don't need that. You need things. Okay. You are a needy being. All right. You are probably characterized by need more than anything else. All right. You're not a god. So you need things, you need sleep, you need time off, you need to take a break sometimes. Sometimes you need to get sick. Sometimes you can work hard and sometimes you can't. So sauna is great for detox, and fasting is definitely fantastic. And maybe throw in a little bit of chlorella or something that might help. And the spike detox supplement, my go-to stack, is definitely pretty helpful. All right. So Liana Patterson says, I'm not understanding how to get someone to look at my situation and labs on the site. Do the doctors look at the medical history and labs and DNA that I uploaded? Yes. Is there a way to send an addendum? Yes. All I see is med packs without even having been evaluated. Okay. So yeah, when you request a med pack, you have to fill out a form, and then somebody will evaluate it. So you have to fill out a medical history form and everything, right? And if you have symptoms, you're gonna have to fill out a symptom questionnaire. And then currently what we're using for our, like, once you go through mygotodoc.com and fill out the forms, and then we create an account for you with our EMR provider, which is called Push Health. But no one should go to Push Health directly, okay? Because thousands of doctors use that, and if you just go there directly and sign up, you're just going to get attached to a random doctor in their network, and then it's a bit of a process and a bit of a pain to take you from that doctor and put you in our practice, and it doesn't happen very quick. There's no manual way for us to do it. They have to do it for us, and it's hard to get through to them and stuff. So, but we will create an account for you on Push Health, and then we'll send you an email. So you got, check your email, or just call us at our phone number, and we'll walk you through all the steps. So our phone number is listed on our website, and I used to know it, but then we changed it for some reason. I'm not quite sure why, but let's see. The current number is 281-393-8266. So you call that number during business hours, and we'll help you out. So basically, it's like you have an account with Push Health. You have to figure out what your username and password is. If you know which email address you used when you signed up with us or when you filled out your forms with us, then you could recover your password from Push Health by putting in that email address. And if it says that there's no, this email address isn't associated with the account, that means you must have used a different email address, or maybe you don't have an account with us. So again, go to MyGoToDoc, get an account. And if you already have an account with us and you fill out new paperwork at MyGoToDoc, it'll just be connected to the same account, at least the same account email. So Push Health, you can log in there, and you can send messages to us. And you can also email us, but it's better to use Push Health as the messaging system. And you can upload things through that messaging system. When you write a message, you can add a file and send the message with the file. And we can review it, all the data labs. We're not DNA experts, so we may not be able to help interpret DNA results. But most labs we can help with, most functional medicine labs and regular labs, and long haul vax injury type of labs, and like specific genetic labs like MTHFR and stuff like that, we can give a little bit of feedback on. Georgianne Toscano Donardo says, I'm still not sleeping. I've used the brain detox cream for 5 nights. Severe insomnia, resistant to medications and natural supplements, 2.5 years from long haul. Lyme, Bartonella, mold treatments don't work without sleep. Xanax, 0.5 milligrams gets me to sleep for 2 hours. Nothing else does. Even brain retraining, which I love, didn't help. And also now I have electrical sensitivity. I know about the EMF cream, but I haven't tried it yet. Need to sleep first and foremost. EMF cream will likely help you sleep if you're electrical sensitive. So that's pretty easy to make. But you have to get some ingredients and mix it up yourself. But otherwise, it's pretty easy. Did you try Mulungu bark? So we have Mulungu bark, which is, to my mind, probably close to, it's probably as strong as 0.5 milligram of Xanax, if not even stronger than that, depending on the dose that you use. So try Mulungu bark to see if you can switch out the Xanax with that. But even if Mulungu bark is helpful, you might need to taper the 0.5 of Xanax. So try to see if it can replace the Xanax. If it can't, then try Mulungu bark plus half a Xanax, half the 0.5 milligrams of Xanax, so half the current dose of Xanax, and try to gradually wean down on the Xanax. Mulungu bark is probably the single best sleep and anxiety supplement I've seen on the planet, and so that's why I put it. I sourced the best quality and the highest potency I could find on the market, and we now offer it at mygotostack.com. So go to mygotostack, 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 all one word, .com, and it should be on the landing page now. So Mulungu bark, it's 20 to 1 extract, full spectrum extract of Mulungu bark. The highest I could find for sale anywhere else, and it's very rare, I mean, hardly anyone sells it, was a 10 to 1 extract. So this is twice as strong as the closest competitor available online, at least. And again, no major brand carries it. It's from the Amazon. It's been used probably for thousands of years, if not longer, and by natives at least. And it has close similarity to a word. Hakim Shabazz told me it has close similarity to a word in Hindi. So he thinks that it must have been known in India or whatever, or maybe some Indians ended up in the Amazon, or who knows, right? So it's not, he's like, it's the Hindi word malung or something, I think it is, means something like relaxation, or it's got some connotation to relaxation or sleep. So or being laid back or something like that. So the Mulungu bark. But you can also add things to Mulungu bark, right? Like magnesium, especially acetyl taurate seems to be particularly good for sleep. Maybe take 400, 800,000 milligrams, maybe even more. So magnesium, Mulungu bark would be fantastic. And then you could even add, a few other things. But if you have a huge problem with sleep and you use artificial lights, then that's where you got to start. And if you don't go out in the sun for sunrise, you got to start there, right? You got to get sunrise sun. That's going to set your biological clock within 3 days. I mean, it's very hard to stay up if you get 30 minutes of sunrise sun every day, direct sun, not through a window glass, direct sun on as much of your body as possible, skin and eyes. So with the eyes, you're only going to get the full effect if there's no glass and if there's no intraocular lens that blocks certain wavelengths like UV. So you don't want any wavelengths to be blocked to get the full effect. I mean, you'll still get beneficial effects, but if somebody got intraocular lens implants and they block certain wavelengths of light, I would go back and change them out for a lens that doesn't block any wavelengths of light at all. And so certainly no contacts, no glasses. The contacts, even if they don't block any wavelengths of light, are really problematic because they block the uptake of oxygen. So your the cornea needs oxygen from the surface, because it has no blood supply in it, because it's totally clear, right? So there's no blood in there. So it needs to get oxygen directly from its surroundings, and slapping a contact lens on there can be a little problematic in that sense. It'll decrease the amount of oxygen entering your corneal cells. And the glasses, I mean, I would just take them off, while you're getting sun. If you really need them read, for the rest of the day, that's fine. Again, have lenses that are not blocking any wavelength of light, including UV, which is not harmful unless you're not getting any other wavelengths of light that help to balance it out. Okay. And so no light after dark if you can't sleep at all, and no technology after dark, and no screens after dark, and no information consumption after dark, no reading in the moonlight, no, heavy discussions after dark. Basically, you have to understand the daytime is for activity and the nighttime is for rest. So in all senses, and the daytime is for consumption and the nighttime is for fasting in all senses of the word. And then if you're still not able to sleep, then you really got to talk to my partner, Hakim Shabazz. I mean, I've seen him fix somebody's sleep in like 5 days who has not been able to sleep for like 2 years, no matter what they did. Okay. So and there might be something beyond the usual stuff, something specific to you based on your context and your history, and something super specific that only you need to get you to sleep that no one else does, or that not many other people do. And once Hakeem Shabazz figures that out, you will be sleeping like a baby. So it doesn't always happen in 5 days, after years of not being able to sleep, but it can. And I've seen it with my own eyes, even very, very recently. Somebody went to him and, excuse me, sorry. They, like I said, I think it was like 18 months of just trying everything they could think of and nothing working. And then, a couple of tweaks and they're sleeping within 5 days. But to get to that, they first had like a severe kind of reaction, which was like a Herxheimer reaction. And if they had been trying to like puzzle this out themselves, they probably would have stopped doing what ultimately got them to sleep on day 5, and then they started sleeping. To tell you exactly step by step what to do and give you a generic protocol with all sorts of like branches and stuff depending on what happens. I guarantee like 99.9% of people are not going to tough it out, or they're going to be like, does he really, like, is this a Herxheimer, or is it is it a bad thing or is it a good thing? Should I continue? Should I stop? Should I like taper off and then taper back up, or should I push through, or should I, it's, and regardless, it's not possible to give a generic protocol because everyone is as unique as their fingerprint. So the protocol that's going to work for you may not work for somebody else. And the protocol that works for 99 out of 100 people may not work. And the tough nuts should go to Hakeem Shabazz. You can see him at mygotodoc.com/Hakeem, Hakim. How do we turn off bases for all my other symptoms? It's really the same approach for every chronic disease. The same basic approach, even though the details are going to, devil's in details, the details are going to be totally different for different people. Or other toxins that are extra or intracellular, like heavy metals, plastics, spike protein, etc. Right? So you need to, and the only reason certain tissues or certain organs are more heavily affected is because for some reason specific to you and your background, your history, and your genetics, and your upbringing, whatever, and your lifestyle, that tissue got weaker and weaker and weaker, and eventually it wasn't able to detox by itself. So you have to strengthen that tissue. You have to stop doing the things that made it weak. You have to open detox pathways out of that tissue. So like this with the skin, you gotta sweat usually, but sometimes maybe you don't need to start right there. So the skin is continuous with your gut. So we're talking about when you have a skin problem, you also have a gut problem. When you have a gut problem, you have a skin problem. Like they're a continuous thing, right? So you're like a tube, right? So the skin of your face is continuous with the skin inside your cheek, which is continuous with your esophagus, which is continuous with everything else, and the skin of your anus is continuous with your skin of your buttocks, right? So this is all one continuous layer, right? Outer layer of your body, even though it seems like it's inside, right? It's actually outside you. Your like inner gut bacteria are outside your body, even though they seem to be inside. So my point here is that oftentimes you need to, you know, clear up gut issues. You need to dramatically change your diet, and usually for most people, it's going to mean an AIP diet that's low carb and even sometimes low protein. Oftentimes low protein. So it's going to be like vegetables and some fat. So it's going to be like a high fat, low protein, low carb diet. So it's going to be bone. Some people might need protein. They might need a protein. So I can't say, right? Depends on who you are and where you're at. But dietary changes and then gut detox. and some people might need some triphala, and you're going to have to fix that. So, and usually the first stage is working on the gut, and on to the skin, or once you yeah, likely in your skin and gut, and you need to support the organs around that support the skin and the gut, so the liver and and the organs themselves, the skin and the gut. And you need to make sure the detox pathways are open. Then you need to take supplements that help to trigger detox slowly and gradually, so that you don't get overwhelmed, so you don't clog the highways out of your body and have a traffic jam and feel terribly sick. And then at some point, maybe in the beginning, maybe a little bit later on, you start to add anti-pathogenic supplements, like maybe chlorine dioxide or colloidal silver, or just don't overdo the colloidal silver, you'll turn blue. So some people found that it worked so well, but only at very high doses, so they turned into Smurfs. There was a lady who had Lyme disease for years, and she was able to control her symptoms with super high doses of colloidal silver. First of all, chlorine dioxide works better and doesn't turn you blue. So, but a reasonable dose of colloidal silver also work fantastic. So anti-pathogenic, so antimicrobial, essentially, may be required. Most people have some kind of living pathogen within them, and probably multiple, including parasites and bacteria, and like they've just grown out of control in a lot of cases, and in other cases actual pathogenic strains have come from outside and gained a foothold within you. So you have untold numbers of your own bacteria, parasites, viruses, fungi, mold. All these things are in a normal, healthy human being, and they must be there. They're part of a healthy superorganism that we call a human being. But when your tissues get weakened, there can be overgrowth, dramatic overgrowth, especially. And if somebody has a lot of exposure to electromagnetic fields, strong ones, they will either have to be nice and tan, because the melanin absorbs and blocks the harmful effect of all electromagnetic fields, or they'll have to have an overgrowth of mold, or they'll have to be inside a Faraday cage or something. I don't know. Maybe there's other ways to block mold, but I'm not aware of them. So these are your options. Choose from those. Either get out of the strong electromagnetic field, get a tan, or be okay with having heavy mold overgrowth in your body to soak up the excess electromagnetic fields. So somebody who's really healthy, they can tolerate excess mold growth, and not find it problematic, not have any symptoms. But somebody whose tissues are weakened will find a problem. The other thing that mold does, it's just like a toxin binder extraordinaire. It's not just EMF, it's any toxin, heavy metals, everything. It'll just like bind and segregate it so that it doesn't affect your tissues. So it takes it out of the game, takes toxins out of the game. And then when you start killing the mold, or start to wean back, cull the numbers within you of the good stuff and get rid of the pathogens, the toxins that they've bound, if they've bound toxins, which they often have, will be released, and then that will create more of a toxic burden that you have to release through detox binders and detox pathways. So it's a tightrope walk. It's like you got to balance a bunch of different things. You're juggling and balancing things and walking across a tightrope between the the Empire State Building and the nearby building, and that's difficult to do in the best of circumstances, and it takes a lot of wisdom and experience to be able to do it well and to do it right. Jim and Janice Rather say, how long do you use the brain detox cream, and did you use it every night for that duration? Did you experience any side effects? What benefits did you see in yourself or your patients? You can use the brain detox cream like indefinitely, but if you're using it as a tool to heal, then you might need to use it throughout that healing process, which could be months. And if you're already super healthy and you just want to like do a detox once in a while, you might do like a couple of like a week 4 times a year, or 3 days 4 times a year. You're gonna have to come up with something regimen yourself, and there's no hard and fast rule here. But I think most people in the modern world are going to need to use it intermittently at least, because we're exposed to so many toxins. And I would use it every night while during the period of time that I decide to use it. Unless you want to use it like once a week or something, that's fine too. That's your intermittent. Intermittency is once a week. You could use it like 3 days a month, or you could use it, a week every quarter or whatever. Or you could use it every day, or you could use it every week. I felt a super slight lightheadedness when I put it on, and especially when I laid down, but nothing really problematic. The benefits were deeper sleep, and in patients, what we find is sleep benefits, and like I've seen people myself like reverse dementia. Okay, reverse like severe dementia, go back down to like mild or moderate dementia, using chlorine dioxide and the brain detox cream, not one or the other, but both together. So chlorine dioxide and the brain detox cream. It clears up the skin, everything in the head and neck. It helps to detox, so it'll clear up skin issues. It'll help with hair issues, and it will brighten things up and improves vision. That's the other thing that we saw in some patients. Their vision got dramatically better after starting to use the brain detox cream. So any kind of brain issues or symptoms can get better. And since the brain is kind of the master controller of the whole body, really any symptoms anywhere in your body might get better, because the neurological component has improved. So the nervous system extends everywhere, either direct connections, neuronal connections, or hormonal connections. So if your nervous system, your brain is not working, and the brain is like the head of the nervous system, if the king of the nervous system isn't working properly, it's also like the emperor of the body in a sense. It's what controls everything and directs everything. If that's not working properly, nothing in the body will work properly, which is one of the things that I went through in my post on the brain detox cream. Let me just see if there's any live messages. Are you concerned about the bird flu? Not really. Unless they actually bioengineer something, that would be a worry, and I think that if bird flu becomes a problem, it will be a bioengineered problem. It's not going to be something that naturally made the jump from the birds to the humans. That, I think, beggars belief, honestly. So I don't think that's what's going to happen. I think it's going to be, if there is a bird flu outbreak or something that appears to be one, it's either going to be a fake pandemic, where it's just a kind of a case-demic or a test, not even a case-demic, a test-demic. It's like, and this has happened before. We know it for a fact. And it happened during COVID as well. There was super inflation of case numbers because you have the PCR cycles way too high. So like papayas are testing positive for COVID. Everything, you stick anything and you test it for COVID, is going to test positive if you have the PCR cycle count high enough. So unfortunately, I think that African ruler was probably assassinated for doing that, along with a bunch of other African rulers. Very, very suspicious. So you can manufacture a pandemic when there is none by just highlighting and like zeroing in with microscopic detail on all the horrible like flu cases going around that year, and then just labeling them bird flu. And some people think that's all COVID-19 was. I don't think that's all it was, but I do think that's possible, and it's happened in the past. It happened. I don't remember which quote unquote epidemic or pandemic it was, but it was in I think the early 2000s, and it might have been SARS-CoV-1, but I think it wasn't. It was something else, where they actually went back, and now the mainstream consensus view became that it was just like due to improper testing, and there was nothing there. There was no pandemic or epidemic. So that could happen. They could do that along with making people sick with some sort of chemical weapons, sprayed on people or whatever, released in some way into subways or whatever. Or there could be a bioengineered actual pathogenic, super pathogenic, strain of bird flu, which they've done. Know that they've been working on developing that out in the open. So certainly what's been going on behind closed doors, who knows, right? The sky's the limit. So that could be a possibility. But, it remains to be seen. So when you labor underneath so much uncertainty and, doctors like myself, we don't know what the government bioweapons labs are capable of, or what they've, sorry, I think I'm pressing something, or what they've created, what level of, bioweapon they're capable of creating. So unfortunately, I don't have a good sense of whether I should be worried about bird flu or not. I do think that the COVID pandemic, case-demic, test-demic, whatever you want to call it, scam-demic, whatever it was, it was so effective at controlling populations that something similar almost certainly will happen again, either a pandemic type situation, and if not, something that's equally effective at controlling populations. So if they need to trot it out again, they will. And the last time coincided with the imminent, near imminent, like, economic collapse, which was, prevented by more money printing than the world has ever seen, okay, within a year or two. So the economy, that it was able to save them from near economic collapse, like a near depression, like a severe depression. I just saw, the news that McDonald's sales have just started to drop, which is one of the leading indicators of a coming depression. So either in the next 6 months, or next year or two, it's possible that they will need a really good excuse to print unprecedented amount of money again, which always causes inflation. But it's possible that they'll need that excuse again. And it seems like one of the excuses last time was the COVID pandemic, to save the financial system. Or maybe they'll just let it collapse, right? Because they might have just needed some runway to help some people escape the collapse of the financial system. So there may have been, and that's probably because it's inevitable. Eventually it will collapse, no matter how much money you print, unless you're willing to hit hyperinflation, which I guess governments are always willing to do since they always tend to do it. So I don't know. I spoke to Tom Renz recently. He thinks it'll happen after the election, after the inauguration even. I don't know. I don't know. I can just speculate. And I don't know if anything I just said in this rambling answer helps anyone at all. But you just, the things that you should do practically are get healthy, lose the weight, lose the insulin resistance that's caused by vegetable seed oils. And everyone probably has some degree, like 99+% of people compared to 1985 norms are insulin resistant today. And we don't know the exact numbers because they just weren't reported properly, but we know, it's very likely far above 99%, which means almost everyone is insulin resistant that you meet, which means that they have to produce too much insulin compared to somebody who had a really healthy metabolism. And they have trouble switching their metabolism to fat burning mode when they don't eat. So if you have to eat, like if you feel hungry, every 3 hours or something, it's one of the signs. If you feel hypoglycemia symptoms, it's one of the signs, but they're not always present in everyone. So you could just get a hypoglycemia without any hunger. You could get like a headache, or you could just get upset or aggressive or something, and just think like, oh, that's just the way I am. But when you start to notice it, it's like, oh, it always happens, 3 hours or more after my last meal, so that's a hypoglycemia symptom. So yeah, most people are hypoglycemic. If you want to know if you are, one of the tests that you might do would be a HOMA-IR. So it's I forget what it stands for, but insulin-IR stands for insulin resistance. Forget. But basically it requires, you can calculate it online as long as you have your fasting insulin and your fasting glucose level. So you can check your home IR, and it should be 1 or less. That would probably be optimal for most people. If it's 1 or above, then, or sorry, less than 1. And if it's 1 or above, then you may have a problem. And the higher above 1 it is, the more of a problem you have. And if you want to know if you have visceral fat, which is what seed oil fat becomes, it packs around your organs and into your organs. It's the inflammatory fat that's triggered by seed oils, especially. Then get a DEXA scan or an abdominal MRI without contrast, and you'll be able to visualize it, which is probably one of the best ways to see it. But I'm not sure if I like MRIs or not. I don't know enough about them. So hope that answered the question. Yeah, am I concerned about the bird flu? I would just get healthy and have some things on hand. I think ivermectin, hydroxychloroquine, and all the stuff that worked for COVID-19, like the quercetin and all that stuff, would be great to have on hand for bird flu. And I wouldn't worry about it, because fear is the mind killer, as they say in Dune. Fear is perhaps the greatest immunosuppressant. Okay, so you need to manage your emotions and your beliefs. So believing that something will kill you or harm you, or that will, wipe out humanity, or, affect you so that you, in a way that you can never get rid of, or never mitigate. These things create your reality. This is real science at this point. Like, we know this. Okay, so Georgianne Toscano Donardo said, "Hi, Dr. Haider. I've been off Facebook because of EMF, so I've gone so ill from not sleeping from long haul. I bought all this stuff to make." Oh, we already did this one. Yeah, or maybe. No, this isn't that one. Okay, so bought all the stuff to make the brain detox, and next time I will make the EMF cream. I will keep you posted here as I use it. I know my symptoms. I have Lyme, Bartonella mold, etc. for being unable to detox. Hope this helps. Thanks for all you do. You're welcome. Karen Walker says, "Is there a book that you would suggest helping someone to learn the mind-body approach to healing?" So there's 2 parts to it, right? So one part is learning about it, like convincing yourself in a deeper and deeper and deeper way that it actually works. That's actually probably the most important part of the mind-body approach to healing, is just becoming more and more convinced that it works. So that you just have to read about it to do that, and read about other people having used it. And so anyway, some books to read would be what is it, Bruce Lipton's books, probably all of his books, and maybe I think it's Joe Dispenza, if he's written any books or done any podcasts. I think he focuses on this as well. And then you can also read the books by Robert O. Becker. So he covers this a little bit as well. And then the actual techniques aren't super complicated, right? Like, it's probably they're all going to be boil down to being some version of visualization plus gratitude. So you visualize what you want to happen in great detail, as much detail as you can, like imagining that you're actually in that situation, that it's already happened, and what would you feel and see and think and do and say, and imagine it as much detail as possible. Get really creative with it. And while you're doing the imagining, feel grateful. Have a deep, profound feeling of gratitude, as though it's already happened. That situation you're imagining is your current reality, as though it's actually there, and you're thanking God or the universe or whoever you want for it, right? So, and then there's going to be a bunch of different versions of that, and maybe different kinds of it, but that's what I understand when I think of mind-body healing versus energy healing, right? So energy healing is, you can go to somebody who's skilled at adding energy into your body, or redirecting or unblocking the energy that's in your body already, and those, it's just you're going to find some people are great at it, some people are not. Some people promote themselves a lot and they're great at promotion, yet they suck at it. They're no good at it. Some people can do it from a distance. Some people have to be right next to you. So it's all practitioner specific. There might be Qigong masters that are great at it and others that are terrible at it. So the general rule nowadays is that 99.9%, at least 99% of people who say they're good at something are not going to be any good at it at all, and they might even hurt you. So energy manipulation can be harmful as well as helpful, right? So if it can help, it can also harm. Homeopathy is a type of energy manipulation as well, so it can also, in the wrong hands, be harmful. So I would begin with visualization and gratitude, and away from the right person, and Hakeem Shabazz is great for that. So I would highly recommend that you consult him, even if you just want guidance on mind-body healing and how to do it, how to do a guided visualization practice. What you visualize, this whole manifestation idea, it is true. You can manifest what you visualize, and it's a form of prayer. Like, we're not gods, we're not creating it ourselves, right? It's a form of like asking God for something and him giving it to you. And the key understanding is that God has everything. He's like, and he loves to be asked for things, and he will freely give you whatever you want, right? So everything you have already, you have in a sense asked to have, okay? Even the bad stuff that you think you don't want, your whole being in its entirety, your whole life up to this point has been an asking for what you currently have. And the only reason you keep what you have is because you continue to request it in some sense, subconscious mostly. But that's the true nature of reality. Bronia Stevens says, the best way to get rid of SIBO in the small intestine, I haven't been the same in my gut since COVID. So small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. So the key thing here is that, like I was saying earlier, the small intestine is weakened. Pathogenic strains and or even just normal strains have increased in numbers in response to that weakness, possibly in response to toxins being released, and certain of the bacteria may consider those toxins food. Okay. So the system is an ecology. The superorganism as a human being is like an ecology. It's an ecological system, like a rainforest. Every bit, every component, every species in there is important for the health of the whole. And when something goes off, when a tree falls and dies, certain microorganisms eat it up, right? They go to town, they have a ball. It's like, a celebration for them. Yay, it's like a festival for the next 6 months or whatever, until it, as long as it takes to break it down, or maybe years. So before, when the tree was alive and standing there, those microorganisms were at a certain number in that spot on the ground. And then when the tree falls, they just multiply dramatically into the tree and eat it up. So the same in your body. If something changes, something in your body that responds to that change is going to respond to that change and take care of it in a sense, right? So we have to give the body the benefit of the doubt, and the superorganism that we have to give our ecology the benefit of the doubt that it's doing the right thing for us. And yet sometimes pathogens can also enter from outside, like kudzu, entering the American South from overseas. That's a pathogen that the American South is not evolutionarily designed to, resist. So in that case, you have to figure out how to get rid of the kudzu. So these are the two possibilities you have, and there's likely a mixture of both going on. So first of all, you need to strengthen the environment of your body and the environment of the small intestine and the small intestine itself. You got to optimize it, which means you have to optimize your lifestyle, right? So everything in your lifestyle will affect everything in your body, right? You can't just say oh, I need to get morning sun because it's good for my heart. It's good for everything in your body. It's not just good for your heart. It's good for your entire body, every single cell, including your microbiome. So first of all, get morning sun, get afternoon sun, get late afternoon sun. This is photobiomodulation. This is circadian rhythms. These are all the hormones, all the major hormones in your body, optimizing them. That will optimize your gut. Help to optimize it, and then change what you eat. Go on a detox diet. AIP is usually what most people are going to have to start with, some version of that. And and maybe some triphala to help boost things along, and eventually maybe some chlorella and stuff like that. But this is just like broad strokes. There could be a lot of mistakes in there. It's not, it can't be medical advice. Like, people always say that, and I'm like, of course, whatever. I'm still going to do it. It sounds like medical advice to me. It's like literally impossible for it to be medical advice, because medical advice is so super, like real medical advice that actually works is going to be super specific to you, and it's not going to depend on 2 sentences worth of information. It's going to depend on 2 hours worth of information gathering and a sense of who you are, and like this higher connection between the healer and the patient, and some kind of like soft variables, not just hard variables, but there are going to be a lot of hard, like, informational variables that are just impossible to compress into. I have SIBO in my small intestine, and my gut hasn't been the same since COVID, right? Like, what does that mean? Has it been constipated? Has it been diarrhea? Has it been something else? But there's a million other questions that would have to be asked to actually tell you what to do. That being said, triphala can be helpful in most gut situations, constipation or diarrhea. So take that as you will. Lily Vo says, how do you feel about mushroom tinctures? Same as vitamins in pharma, that it covers up what's needed to be felt and seen, chlorine dioxide for diabetes. So when I say vitamins, what I mean is something that your body requires for functioning, like the misnamed vitamin D, which is actually a hormone, or vitamin C, or vitamin E, K, B vitamins. These are nutrients, okay, that have been isolated from where they occur in the natural world and are being taken separately in high quantities, divorced from their normal context, right? So the information that normally goes with them is not coming with them when you take them as a vitamin. Supplements, I guess, depending on what you mean, it could include vitamins and herbs and whatever, right? So we have to distinguish between vitamins, again, which are necessary nutrients, and minerals are also necessary nutrients. But minerals are often are safer to take on their own, because they are oftentimes present in the environment, just in water, for example, right? You can add minerals to water, and that's basically a natural source of minerals. They are present in food as well. Unfortunately, our is depleted and our food is depleted. So how do you get them? So yeah, minerals, special case. Probably most people need to take some minerals. Most people should be using some sort of clean sea salt or similar kind of complex salt, and then you can get electrolyte powders and stuff like that. Electrolytes / minerals, you can get those powders, and there are some really good ones. I think fast-lyte.com is one that I'm using right now. And then, medications, obviously, no one has medication deficiency, and those are just completely artificial. And then we've got herbs and mushrooms and stuff like that, right? So those are medicines as well, right? So, and I'm not against all medicine, right? So what I consider real medicine are the herbs and the mushrooms and all those things. And yes, you will need them sometimes, right? So somebody with cancer might need to take, turkey tail and a bunch of other mushrooms as tinctures or in other ways for a period of time to help their immune system, to boost their immune system. But you have to know what you're doing, and you have to do it properly, because if you do the wrong thing, like for example with vitamin D, like my recent blog post on vitamin D, this deep dive on autoimmune disease and vitamin D, go look at it if you want. It's at blog.mygotodoc.com. There's a short version of it, which is linked from the long version, so you can check out both, or whichever one you want. But the point there was that supplemental vitamin D, depending on the person who's taking it, can either be suppressive or, it can activate. It can activate or suppress the immune system, depending on the context. And most people who have autoimmune disease, taking supplemental vitamin D is actually suppressing their immune system rather than activating it. And they think that that's what they want. Some people understand that they don't want to activate their immune system in that case, because it's their immune system that's overactivated with autoimmune disease. But what they don't realize is that they need their immune system to be activated to fix the underlying problem. Suppressing it is just like the vitamin E situation, with the vegetable oils that I spoke about earlier, where the vitamin E suppresses the symptoms and the signs and the lab tests and the oxidative stress of vitamin E, but the stress gets worse and worse and worse over time until it overcomes the suppressive ability of the vitamin E. So in the exact same way, taking vitamin D in the wrong situation, when your immune system is trying to activate itself, it can become a suppressant. It can become an immunosuppressant, and it can inhibit the vitamin D receptor, and it can inhibit other receptors that suppress the immune system. And that allows the underlying autoimmune problem to get worse and worse and worse. And autoimmune problems are essentially pathogen toxin problems, right? Toxic pathogenic buildup in your body that your immune system's trying to get rid of, like we spoke about earlier with the army analogy. Um, so, I mean, there's no generic kind of protocol approach way for me to tell you like who needs mushroom tinctures, who doesn't. Chlorine dioxide is useful in so many situations, primarily because almost everyone has a pathogenic situation and they don't know about it either. And some people need to go beyond chlorine dioxide. They need to do other things to do, a parasite cleanse in other ways. So chlorine dioxide is helpful for diabetes, probably because most diabetics have a pathogen situation, which means they have overgrowth of pathogenic microbes that are being, the chlorine dioxide is helping their immune system kill them. So yeah, it all depends. Mary Muffet says, my Hashimoto's thyroiditis seems to be out of control. I think it's related to the spike protein. Yes, I was forced to take the vax, trying to detox with zeolite. Anything else that would help? TSH remains elevated despite changing T3, T4 and watching diet. The first thing you have to understand about autoimmune disease in general, and almost every disease, perhaps every disease, I don't know, there might be some exceptions, is that the symptoms are the solution, okay? The symptoms are your immune system. They are your Army, Air Force, Navy. They are your military wiping out the enemy within you, okay? And that enemy, in some cases, is in your own cells. They have to go, and you got to replace them with new cells. And so the person who has psoriasis for 30 years and then finally it dwindles away and goes away, it took them 30 years to detox, okay? It took their body 30 years to slowly release the toxin from their psoriasis. And the people, this has been my own experience, the people who suppress their psoriasis, they put creams and lotions and all that sort of stuff on it, it'll disappear, right? Initially, but it'll get harder and harder to suppress because, again, it's building up over time and your body's trying harder and harder to release the toxins. You're not letting it, you keep suppressing it. And the toxins continue to be built up, perhaps, I mean, certainly in the modern world, they keep getting built up. But there may have been a particular toxin, right? Like a vaccine or something, or multiple vaccines that you took as a child that were trying to be released through the skin as psoriasis, plaques. Because what is psoriasis? It's like the skin cells are multiplying super fast, right? And they're flaking off, and so basically bits of skin are flying off of you really quickly, and taking with them heavy metals, microplastics, whatever it is, right? Whatever that thing is that triggered your skin to need to detox, they got collected in those areas of your skin. Very, highly probable that in a lot of people is due to vaccines, but other things too. But at the same time, more toxins are generally coming in, throughout your life. And if that particular tissue is your weak link, then that's where the toxins are going to build up, instead of in other tissues that are able to prevent them from taking up residence within them. And the more you suppress it, eventually the worse and worse it gets, and eventually you have super out of control and you've escalated dealing with the underlying cause. It must get worse because you have not gotten rid of the problem. And in most cases, the problem probably is festering and growing because you haven't changed what led to the problem in the first place. You haven't like eliminated the sources of toxins because you haven't changed anything about your life, right? Okay, so Hashimoto's thyroiditis out of control usually means that there have been years of not resting and not having a proper lifestyle and suppressing symptoms, perhaps. I don't know. In order to unwrap without chopping it in half, we'll just chop you in half too, right? Like you can't use Alexander's approach to the Gordian knot of your illness because he chopped it in half. You can't hack yourself to pieces, right? You can't chop, or at least you shouldn't chop out your thyroid and replace it with it's a super suboptimal solution. It's much better to have a working organ, even if it's dysfunctional, than to have no organ and have to replace its function. There's no way to do it perfectly. You can do a really good job, but it's how can you do the job of the organ perfectly without replacing the organ itself? The organs are exquisitely responsive to micro fluctuations in their environment within you, right? In your internal environment, and the hormone levels are exquisitely responsive, and they go up and they have circadian rhythms and they have micro fluctuations, and it's and they communicate with each other and stuff like that. So it's a symphony, right? You have a symphony orchestra between all your cells and all your organs, directed by your heart. Your heart is apparently the conductor. Okay, so yeah, I would like the true cure for Hashimoto's is going to require tapering off of T3 and T4, and not worrying about your TSH so much anymore, right? Not worrying about your labs in general anymore. Worrying about how you feel, and one of the messages something like Hashimoto's might be sending you, in addition to like I'm toxic and I need to get rid of these toxic things within me, I need to get rid of the aluminum or whatever it is that is in me, by killing off some cells, causing inflammation, building new cells from stem cells, and then being fine eventually. So the proper approach is to suck it up, roll up your sleeves, and work hard. By suck it up, I mean you're gonna have to be uncomfortable. And if you've let it get to that point, this ratcheted up severity, you can't just suddenly quit everything, because that's going to lead you into a situation that's too severe. So again, you have to be diplomatic with the situation, okay? So when you have a overwhelmingly strong enemy, you're going to have to slowly, bring the tensions back down, right? So it's like a Cold War, right? It's like it's kind of like a standoff, right? So you're going to have to slowly, both of you guys, lower your guns, put them on the floor, and step back from them, right? Make sure the other guy is doing exactly what you're doing in the same rate, and or you have some external help in the situation. It comes and disarms both of you. So this is what we have to do. We have to slowly de-escalate gradually, by doing all the right things: correct diet, correct, targeted few supplements, correct lifestyle, sunlight, which triggers thyroid production. And so every organ in your body needs sunlight, and it is harmed by artificial light at night. So I'm going to be releasing, I think on August 2nd, maybe in a couple of days, an article about how everyone in the modern world has been on SSRIs since they were babies, in a sense, because blue light, triggers the release of serotonin. And so what is an SSRI? Selective serotonin reuptake inhibitor. It increases the amount of serotonin by decreasing the recycling of serotonin. Now, blue light increases serotonin, and everyone leaves the lights on for like a few hours after dark, right? So you have more serotonin production. Now, serotonin recycling happens, and one of the ways that it happens is by being converted. It's the precursor to melatonin and dopamine, but so it's a precursor to melatonin, which is a nighttime hormone. And the nighttime hormone melatonin only starts being produced when the lights go off. So you're going to have less melatonin chronically every night of your life when you leave the lights on too long, when you leave lights on at all after sunset, when you have lights on after sunset. And that means you're going to have an excess of serotonin. So less serotonin recycling, excess of serotonin, blue light is an SSRI. But it's not just that hormone. It's all the hormones. Thyroid hormone as well. You're basically, all the hormones of the daytime, are all the organs that produce those hormones are being overtaxed, being asked to produce a longer, rise in those hormones, because the days are longer. It's like a never-ending summer for your whole life, where your days are many, many hours longer than, quote unquote, days are many, many hours longer than they should be. So your tissues are overtaxed. Eventually they become weak, and eventually they become toxic due to external pathogens and internal pathogens, or internal pathogenic factors, lack of autophagy and stuff like that. And then you become diseased, and then your immune system gets notified that, hey, there's a serious problem here. We got to go and clean up the thyroid. And then it comes and it tries to do its cleanup job, and then you prevent it from doing that while continuing to worsen the entire problem from the start, right? Not sleeping well enough, leaving the lights on too late, not getting enough sunlight, eating seed oils, etc. I personally think the most important things are light, sunlight, no artificial light. Sunlight throughout the day, no artificial light, or minimum artificial light during the day, and none at night, zero. No consumption at night, consumption during the day, okay? And grounding, and no seed oils. And, and then how you feel, address your emotions, make sure you're grateful as much as possible, visualize what you want, be grateful doing it. Change your beliefs about what disease is and what symptoms are, and understand and be grateful that your body's helping you, and don't feel like you're fighting your body. You're not fighting your body. Your body's on your side. Your body is your greatest helper. It's your greatest physician. It's your greatest friend, and it will, do whatever it takes to keep you alive. Whereas physicians will oftentimes, almost always, make mistakes and harm you. Your body does not. Pam Berglund says, have you found a correlation between long COVID, 4+ years post-virus, and reactivation of Epstein-Barr virus? Yes. Lyme and Lyme co-infections? Yes. If so, what have you seen working? If somebody's tried the basic stuff in like a basic protocol that you can find at mygotodoc.com/long haul vax with 2 X's, long haul vax protocol offer, and they've tried the ivermectin and the, and LDN and spike immune, spike buster supplements, and detox supplements and herbs, and those things, and they haven't gotten better. There are a bunch of other supplements you can try, and if you've tried all the lifestyle stuff and you haven't gotten better, you need somebody who's gonna evaluate you individually and tell you what's wrong with you. Chlorine dioxide could be something you could try, right? Sure, it could help with EBV, Lyme co-infections, absolutely. But you might need to go deeper. You might need to go to other antimicrobials. You might need doxycycline. You might need some special delivery mechanism for doxycycline, for all I know, right? Like, you might need somebody to take a deep interest and be a bit, think out of the box, and that person needs to have a lot of experience, and they can figure out what's going to work for you. The mind and the heart play a huge role in all of this, right? So if you don't believe that, then you got to talk to somebody who instills that belief in your heart, because it can completely change your reality. You don't have to bemoan the fact that there's no way to deliver the, doxycycline into my brain, into the exact space that it needs to be, and whatever. There are ways, okay, to get better. No matter who you are, everything can be cured, everything can be healed. And it's just certain people can't be healed or cured because they haven't gone to the right person, or they're not willing to do what it takes. So the right person right now, I think there's only one that I would recommend wholeheartedly without reservation. That's my partner, Hakeem Shabazz. You can find him at mygotodoc.com/Hakeem, Hakim. Even though I can talk the talk, pretty well, and I understand basically the broad strokes of what he does, I haven't yet learned it all myself. So I wouldn't actually recommend people see me if they're willing to take the high road, the hard road, the real path to real deep healing. A lot of people, again, aren't willing to do that. It's fine. We can do kind of like a half and half, or whatever you're willing to do, and I can probably get you like, to that, help you to that degree. But a lot of it, no matter who you go to, okay, no matter if you go to a functional alternative or anyone, a big part of it is going to be lifestyle change. So some people are good at convincing people of changing their lifestyle, and some people are not. Hakeem Shabazz is pretty good at it. And the more people are willing to do, the better, the more they get out of the protocol that he recommends. So I've seen amazing changes with people who are just doing like 30-40% of what he recommends, because he'll usually recommend a lot. And the point with it is that it's going to seem overwhelming when you open it up and look at it the first time. Stick with it, go through it a few times, you'll realize it's not that overwhelming. And once you start to do it, you'll realize that it is possible, it is doable. And the key thing is that it's only going to be the next few months of your life where you have to really roll up your sleeves and work hard. Okay. So any good thing you've had in your life took either super hard work from you or from somebody else, right? It was due to super hard work of your parents or your ancestors or somebody, and you got the benefit of it, or is your own super hard work, right? So the best things in life are not free. Okay. It's going to take work. And if you're willing to do that work, you will get a tremendous reward, and it'll pay dividends for the rest of your life. And then you just gotta put yourself on cruise mode after that, and it'll be much, much easier after that. So once you do the hard work up front, the rest of the maintenance work is much, much, much easier. Okay. Barbara Bonavoglia says, my taste and smell have changed drastically. I can taste and smell, however, nothing tastes or smells right. Besides COVID, I've been going through a lot. This started about in February, 6 weeks after COVID, which started on January 8th. I also had several teeth extracted. 3 of them needed stitches, about 6 dental visits in February. I had radiation 11 months prior. I was told to see an ENT, I think. He did an MRI of my head, found nothing, but he did find my my brain, laugh out loud. Anyway, I have no clue what to do to fix this. Sometimes I'll taste what I'm eating, but